Hello, my name is LaKesha Boddy, and I have the distinct privilege of interviewing an amazing person today. She has written and published 7 books. She has a video blog entitled Beyond the Books. She has workshops that teaches people how to publish their own material. She has held multiple book clubs around her books to have a discussion about the different characters and the lives, and she's an overall wonderful person. I'm talking about none other than Ardina Henderson, aka A. Michele Henderson.
Thank you. I want to meet her. I'm thinking, wait a minute, who's this? How are you? I'm well today. Thank you.
Good, good. So we know that setting up and getting prepared for this day, we had the readers email a lot of questions, right? A lot of your fans sent in questions. And so based off of that, it seems like you've had some people that's been with you since the trilogy, right? Since day one following you. But what I also recognize is you have a lot of new readers. So I was wondering if we could just kick it off with you telling the people a little bit about who you are.
All right, awesome. Again, I am Ardina Henderson, also known as A. Michele Henderson is my pen name, and originally from Providence, Rhode Island, so I am a Maryland transplant. I've been here for quite some time, and I live here with my husband and my young son, and I'm just happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for the opportunity. Absolutely. So I wanted to tee that up and start the conversation with you telling about yourself, because my next question is going to be around your bio.
Okay.
So just to make sure that I get it right, what I saw on social media, in your bio, you are listed as being a child of God, a wife, a mother, a confidant, and a creative force, among a few other things. Mm-hmm. There's 2 that I want to tap into and get you to expound on in particular. First is the confidant. When did you realize that you were a confidant?
Wow, that's a good question. I think I didn't realize it until a couple years ago. Probably about 10 years ago, I remember being on the phone with a senior church leader who was over a couple thousand people, and my husband had come in while I was on the phone. The conversation probably was about 2-hour conversation, and when I hung up, he thought it was one of my peers. He was like, oh, who is that? And when I told him, he was kind of taken aback, like, really? That was your conversation with them? Why did they feel the need to call you about that? And so at that point, I was thinking, okay, maybe that was weird. But then it kept happening, and so it would be nothing for me to be in a workplace and my boss called me into the office, and I think it's about policy or procedure, and they want to talk to me, and before I know it, they're like putting all this stuff out there, and I'm giving advice. Or I would have professors. I remember one time when I was in school, a professor had split the class in half. She was really overwhelmed. She had too many people in the section, and she was like, you're my best student. I'm going to split the class in half. I need you to correct papers. I need you to grade. And it's funny because it was an English class. And so she had me correcting term papers, helping people with papers. Of course, she did all the teaching, but when it came time to help people with their stuff, I was responsible for half the class. I even remember going into a teacher-student meeting, and I thought it was about my grades, and again a professor was asking me for advice. And so being a confidant is not something I recognized until about 2 years ago, when the Lord told me in my quiet time that he has actually called me to be a confidant to powerful people who otherwise can't be themselves in front of everyone. And so I think I have the unique gifting, so to speak, to still honor who you are in your respective place, but still separate your who from your do.
Wow, that's good. One of the things that I've always found amazing about gifts is that even when we don't recognize it as a gift, right, we attract those things or those people that need our gift. Mm-hmm. And that's a prime example of that. Thank you for sharing that. The second one is the creative force. So one of the things that I absolutely love about your work is that you have the ability to send your readers through so many emotions in such a short amount of time. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember you saying that you would never be that writer that would write 400 to 500 pages, right? No. But 1 minute we are busting a gut laughing. The next minute we're crying, like, where is the Kleenex? text, like we just lost someone that we're close to,
Yes.
or that just happened to someone that I knew, grew up with and loved. And then right after that, we have our mouths wide open in disbelief about something that just happened.
Wow.
So one of the questions that I received is, what is your creative process for your writing? How do you come up with your storylines and your plots?
Okay, wow, that's a great question. For me, kind of like a computer system, I have to clear my cache when it's time to get ready to write. And so for me, it's mentally going back to a more simpler time. I mean, we really live in chaotic times. So for me, I like to close myself off in a room and listen to all old records I grew up on, Stevie Wonder, Kool and the Gang, whatever it may be, records my grandparents played, my parents played. And so I have to kind of go back to a simpler time in order to write from a more pure place. And so I'll begin, when I know a book is coming out, I will begin 2-3 months ahead of time to go back to that thing so that the creative process can begin. And what was your other question? I'm sorry.
How do you come up with your storylines and your plot?
Just being an observer of life. Anything can like really give me something to write about. Like, I'm that person who can be sitting in the mall waiting for my husband to come out the store, and I'm on a bench. Look at the opposite, right? I'm waiting for him to come out of the store. I'm sitting on a bench, and I mean, a person can walk by, and because of the bag they're wearing, the bag they're carrying, excuse me, you know, how they're walking, I can create a whole story about that person, not even know them. And so sometimes just people watching, it could be something that's in the news that sparks my attention, like with Convicted. That was more from a media standpoint that Convicted came about. But just being an observer of life and an observer of people, really, because anytime I'm in a room with people, I'm going to walk away with something.
You just mentioned something in your response about how anytime you're just out and about in your day, you can see something and totally stretch that somewhere else. How long does it take you to write a book from start to finish?
Before being a mom, I could write a book in 3 weeks. Now, with all the hats I wear, and like I said, you know, I'm working and things, so now it would hit that 2-month mark. Realistically, I try to write, you know, in my normal fashion, but you know, the demands are always, you know, pulling at you, and before you know it, you walked away from the computer and it's 7 hours later. And so I don't have the time I used to have, but so about 2 months.
Sure. So we're gonna shift gears from the books just for a little bit, but I promise we will get back to that, right? Not only because I am a personal fan, but because your fans want to hear more about the books.
Okay.
So the last episode, I think, of Beyond the Books, it was right around the time that you had lost your father-in-law.
Yes.
And you did, the thing that I appreciated was that you let the readers know and your fans know that, hey, I'm going to take a break.
Yes.
You won't be seeing me as frequently as before. So the question is, what have you been doing since then?
Okay, well, one of the things that I did after I signed off for Beyond the Books, I believe that was December of 17. I launched 2 books, Vicarious and Superstar, on the same day in 2018, knowing that I was about to go back to work. I wanted to give my readers something to hold on to, because in my mind, my son was going to school during the day, and it was, you know, time for me to get back out in the workplace and, you know, just earn some income outside of the home. And so because he could go to school, I had planned in my mind to go back to work. And so I put the 2 books out, and I mean, like 4 weeks later, I had a job. And so I've been doing that. Still writing, because it's not something I can actually get away from. So I can be on, like I told you, I can be anywhere and something drop into me, into my head. And so I'm always writing. It's kind of like a daily thing. Like, I'll get an idea, something will spark. I'll have to pull out the notes in my phone and just jot something down. So I'm doing that. Like I said, I'm working a full-time job, regular day-to-day mom stuff, wife stuff. Yep.
So with the writing, how do you balance your writing and your reading? Because I read somewhere where you're an avid reader as well.
I am.
So what kind of puts you in the mood to do either or?
Well, one of the things, well, I don't read fiction at all. I don't read fiction, but when I do read, I read for growth. And so I feel like anytime we get stagnant in life, anytime we aren't growing in a certain area, it's because we don't have information for that area. And so it's nothing for me to grab a book, but it's always for my growth and never for my entertainment.
You said something that was very interesting, and I'm sure the audience has captured that as well. So you said you do not read fiction, but you're a Christian fiction writer. That's interesting.
Right.
And it kind of is a perfect segue into my next question. What books have you read that have had the most impact in your life?
Wow. If I had to choose a few books that had lasting impressions on me, they would be Becoming Who You Are by Dutch Sheets, The Necessity of an Enemy by Ron Carpenter. Wow. I did enjoy Can You Stand to Be Blessed by T.D. Jakes, and The 15 Laws of Growth by John Maxwell, are all books off the top of my head that I can say, actually, I still pull from those lessons I've learned in all of those books, even today. Yeah.
I think that's the great thing about nonfiction work, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what age we're in, what day we're in, time, season, whatever is going on in the world,
Yeah.
it's still applicable. And you can find
Absolutely.
nuggets in there that can carry you and be relevant in that time.
Absolutely.
So that is awesome. So when you think about the fact that you don't really fool with fiction like that, where did the thought and the idea even come from for you to write fiction?
Oh my gosh. And the reason I don't read fiction is because I don't want the contamination. I don't want
That makes
to,
sense.
when I was a reader of fiction years ago, I read all the classics that everyone's read. But oftentimes I would read so much that I would think I knew a person, and I would be like, remember the girl that this, and then that was a book, you know what I mean? And so I realized it's able to contaminate me. And so the reason I don't read fiction is because I write fiction, and I just don't want anyone else's, ideas falling into my pages. But it was funny because I've always wanted to write a book ever since I was a child. And I remember one day talking to my cousin Fran, who is, Franny's world famous on her own. But she was just like, well, why don't you write a book? And it was just so simple to her. And I'm like, and I, you know how we are, we run through a list of excuses why we can't write a book. And she's just like, I'm sure you can figure it out. You're a smart girl, So, and then having a conversation with someone one day, and because I always thought I was going to write nonfiction, but I realized in order to write nonfiction, one, you have to keep growing, and two, you have to live it out. You can't give people advice or even talk about a topic you haven't experienced, right? So someone was like, oh, well, why don't you write fiction? And I was like, I can't do that. I live in my head too much. And then I realized that was the very reason to write fiction, is because I live in my head so much. And so to get those ideas out and to get those concepts out, that's how I end up writing fiction. But I had to also stop reading it.
You were absolutely right when you said that it's not the same when you're telling someone something when you haven't walked in that, right? The message hits a lot different.
Yes.
The passion and how you speak about it comes out a lot different. And I think it's received a lot different as well when you've actually walked that thing
Absolutely.
through.
They know when you're phony. They know when you're faking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Your fictional work, it ties into so many, I think, relevant situations, family dynamics, things that have happened in the church, the gamut of things that really do happen in real life. What is the purpose that fuels your work? What is that driving force? And at the end of the day, is there a goal that you want your readers to walk away with when they finish a Michele Henderson book?
Wow, that's a great question. I would say what fuels my writing is wanting people to have a balanced view of life. Not to slight anyone, a lot of Christian books are really simplistic in how they depict life. And for the people I grew up around, honey, life was not that simple. You know, some people come from really far off to find the things of God and find light in their lives. And so it was more of wanting people to know it don't matter what you did 10 minutes ago, he's got something for you. But it had to be real and it has to be raw so that people can find themselves in the page. You know, I think there's a misnomer out there that you got to get yourself together before you come to church, you know what I mean? And so it's like trying to get well, then I'm gonna go to the hospital.
Yeah, we would never be at church.
I know. And so I was just like, you know what? You know, people need to hear some stories and read some stories that ring true for who they are.
Sure.
And the ultimate goal for me would be just change lives. I would want people to pick up the books and see themselves, and in their private, quiet time, find something to hold on to, something to spark change, dialogue, whatever it is, because there's so many topics that I do tackle. But, you know, I'm just putting out there. If Tyler Perry want to call me, Ryan Coogler, Ava DuVernay, we could put this stuff on the screen. Like, hey, I'll take a whole feature film for all of them. So that would be the ultimate dream.
Well, if that's your goal, I would have to say that you achieve that goal with every book.
Oh,
there is always something that's thought-provoking, that makes you think. And I think one of the things that I really appreciate is that no matter how bad the situation is, right, there is always hope and there's always light at the end of the tunnel. And I think you portray that very well in your books.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. As a person that has released 7 books, right, I'm sure that you have received several reviews and comments from people of how your work has impacted their life.
Yeah.
What's one of, if you think back to all of that you received, what's your most memorable or rewarding moment as an author?
I think one of my most rewarding moments as an author, I was called in to do a book discussion, and it was at a point where I was ready to give up. I'm like, I'm not doing this no more. I'm writing my heart out and nobody cares. You know, you get through that whole thing. And so I always show up for my gigs. I got myself together. I went for the book discussion, and toward the end, someone had said, oh, this young lady here, do you mind, you shared with me, but can you share with her about her book? And so the girl stood up reluctantly, and she told me that she was in Shepherd Pratt, which for people who aren't in Maryland, it's a mental wellness center, you would say, hospital. And she was in Shepherd Pratt. She said she was homicidal and suicidal.
Wow.
And someone gave her one of my books. And so she said she couldn't put it down, and she started telling people about it. And 1 week they had a couple sessions in therapy with my book. And so it was like, all I need is one. And so I left that book discussion. I mean, all the people who came and, were grateful and all that, but she just left a lasting impression on me. And so I was just like, okay, I can't give up. I mean, who would have thought that their book would make it to, a mental institution? And so that really touched me, and I'll always remember her and be grateful to her for that.
Wow, that's such a powerful, I think, life lesson that came out of that. Isn't it interesting how right when you're at the moment to where you want to throw in a towel because it just doesn't seem to be rewarding you the way that you want to,
wow,
God sends you this person that is like, I'm in control. There is a purpose. There is a point. And that's the thing that fueled you to the next book.
Absolutely.
That is absolutely awesome.
It is, and it was.
So we talked about the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
There's always the flip side of that and the bad stuff.
Yes.
How do you handle the critics?
Well, one of the things that I've had to realize is everything isn't for everybody. And so for me, for the critics, for the people who think, it's too much, it's too, saucy, it's too this or too that, you're not my reader. You're not one of my followers. And there's some books for you, but mine's aren't them. And so I had to come to the realization that if you don't enjoy my books, you're not one of my readers. And so there are times when it's hard to take, especially when it's usually someone on a keyboard You know, it's never someone in your face. And so, but yeah, all in all, if it didn't touch you or if somehow you were offended, it wasn't for you.
Yeah, praise God and keep it moving.
Yes.
I get it. I like that.
Yes.
So I'm gonna have a little bit of fun with this one.
Okay.
It is either an author's favorite question or most dreaded question.
Okay.
So we'll see what it holds for you. When you think about the books that you have written, what is your favorite one that you've written so far?
Gosh.
And on the flip side of that, which one did you enjoy writing the most?
Wow. Oh my god, that's like asking someone who's their favorite kid. I birthed all these.
Hey, I tried to tee you up and let you know and set the stage for that one.
Let's see. If I had to just pick a book off the top of my head, of course I enjoyed the trilogy because that was my springboard and that set me up for everything. But I really enjoy the story of Superstar. I think that I love Superstar as a book. It was my first time writing with a male lead. All of my other books were from the female perspective. Not that I have a male perspective, but my main character was a man. And so I would have to say that that book will always be near and dear to my heart because I had a lot of apprehension at the time thinking, okay, can I have a male lead in a book and I'm a woman? And so I found a way to write the book about him and not try to take, a stance like I was a man. So I was able to write a story about this male lead without being male. And I think the book that was the most fun, you said, to write probably would be Vicarious, only because it's set in my hometown and I got to put in a lot of things from my childhood, a lot of things that are very true to not only Rhode Island, but New England as a whole. It's a very different place to grow up. And growing up in New England is like no other. And so I would say Vicarious was the most fun because I got to almost relive a lot of the things from my childhood, to write that book. So I would say Superstar is a favorite and Vicarious is fun.
I think Superstar is my favorite as
Really?
well. And I think it's interesting, I'm really enjoying this discussion with you because under the undertone of it, that I don't even know if you realize, you are dropping a lot of nuggets, like life nuggets. So when you think about your response to Superstar and writing it from a perspective of a male, which you're not, and you really can't identify to that, it talks to being stretched, right, in your gift.
Wow.
And I think the biggest thing that I took from that is sometimes you have to do things afraid, right?
Yes.
And overcome that fear by putting it out there. And it worked out in the end. It always works out if we just do it, right?
Yes.
So congrats and kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
When you think about all that you've done, the writing, the publishing, the video blog, the workshops that you've done, the book discussions that you've had, everyone that you interact with, what is your vision for your work? For A. Michele, the brand?
Wow. And it's so funny because I am one of those people who don't think of myself as a brand. Kind of people make you a brand when you're just trying to do what you were supposed to be doing. But I think, my goal used to be 10 books. I said, I'm going to publish 10 books and I'm done. And I'm on the dawn of releasing book number 8. It's 8? 8. And so the closer I get to 10, it's like, and because I get so many downloads during the day, it's just like, I think, God's way of saying, you thought 10, but, I'm going to stretch you further. So I do want to get into nonfiction. And I'm going to do that probably the middle of next year. Not like writing my memoirs or anything like that, but from a more autobiographical perspective of things I've overcome. And so I'm going to release a book, on myself that is nonfiction, and that's going to be a stretch moment too. I reached out to the person that I want to write my foreword, and it's big. So it's so exciting that they said yes. And yeah, that's going to be a stretch moment for me. So like I said, I came in wanting 10, and the closer I get to 10, I'm thinking 10 might not be it. But other than that, beyond the books, I would want that to keep going, because I do like interacting with the fans and the readers and the new, even people who are just watching for, there's some people who probably aren't even watching because they care about the books, but because of the topics. Yeah. And so I would like to expand in that area from the perspective of the show. And publishing, I'll probably still do the workshops to publish your project, but I probably won't publish. Do too much publishing for others.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
It's nice that you have decided what that path is, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's a lot easier when we have an idea of where we want to go, mm-hmm. versus just taking on anything at the fly, and you find yourself saying yes to everything when you really don't have time to do the things that you need to be doing already. Yep. So that's good. For the last couple of weeks, you've been flooding social media with hashtag Blake 2020.
Yes.
And I think the last time we heard about Blake was in Vicarious, and she was preaching at a women's conference. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you could tell us about Blake? What we can expect in this new book? What has she been up to? Anything?
Oh my goodness, the stuff that I have for this book is, I always say it, but it's epic. Stuff I can share. A couple that people know and love will be no longer. There's gonna be some rocky times for Blake and Ryan. I mean, of course, they're no strangers to some of the things that they've been through. Wow, I can't, it's just so much stuff. I don't want to give it away, but it's going to be so good. The readers are not going to be disappointed, because I'm going there. I'm going all the way there, and I'm going there twice. And so it's going to be the book that the readers have been waiting for, because I made them wait, this whole year with not releasing any content. So they won't be disappointed. I'll say that.
Well, fans, I tried my hardest. Can you at least tell us a ballpark figure of when we can expect to have it in our hands?
Blake 2020, y'all.
That's all you're gonna give us, okay?
2020.
I can deliver. That.
I can deliver on that. I don't want to say,
I respect that.
Yes.
It has been an absolute pleasure having this discussion with you today.
Thank you.
I hope you found it valuable and insightful.
Absolutely.
So as we close, can you tell the readers how they can contact you or follow you? And are there any final thoughts that you would like to share?
I just want to thank all of my readers who have been with me since 2013, when I was scared and launched the DOD trilogy. And I just want to thank all my new readers that I picked up along the way. And I just thank you for rocking with me. I thank you for your patience. And I thank you how you always look out for me. I can't tell you how many of you write in my inbox and in my DMs. And so I thank you for all the love, and I thank you for all the appreciation for what I do. I am on Instagram at Beyond the Books A Michele, 1 L in Michelle. I'm on Facebook at A Michele Henderson. So yeah, those are my social medias. And my final thoughts are, I just want to thank all of the readers out there who have been with me since day one. I want to thank my new readers who've joined us along the way. And I just want to thank you all for all the love. I get your DMs, I get your inboxes. We get your emails, and so I thank you for still looking out for me, still checking on me, and for rocking with me all this time. And I just do appreciate all of the readers, all of the fans, and I just really look forward to meeting with you guys and talking with you all in book discussions and all the places that I'll be out for 2020.
Well, thank you so much for your time and for taking the time to view this discussion that we had. If we did not get to your questions, we apologize. We will catch you on the next segment.
Bye-bye. Thank you.